Hey, everybody, welcome back to Black Lotus, where we talk about all things strange and unusual. And today we are going to be talking to Gary Robusto, otherwise known as Gary Hootenholler. And I want to read something real quick because otherwise I know I'm just going to screw this up. But Gary Robusto has been a paranormal researcher for 24 years and is the founder of the Tri-City New York Paranormal Society and the New York Bigfoot Society. He's been featured on the Discovery Channel, the History Channel, National Geographic, Travel Channel, Destination America, along with international TV. He's a boots on the ground field researcher whose love for the outdoors and skills in mountaineering animal behavior drives him to be out in the field gaining possible evidence and information from a logical and realistic point of view. Today we usually have Quincy Roser with us and Keith Blanchard, but unfortunately Keith Blanchard had another show to do because we had to up this show by an hour, so he won't be with us. He may join us a little later, we don't know. But Quincy is suffering from some storms in his area, so his internet is going out pretty badly. So, but we do have Wild Trees with us. Wild, how's it going, man?
I'm doing great, really great. Really excited to talk to Gary and talk to you guys, Amy and Ralph.
How was your week?
Yeah, it was a good week. Yeah, it was very good. Yeah.
So, Gary, I kind of want to jump right into this and ask you, what are the biggest differences between paranormal investigation and tracking a cryptid? It seems that there's evidence for both. I mean, we've never been able to capture a Bigfoot, but we have been able to kind of capture spirits in a sense. So what's the biggest difference between the two?
All right. Well, thank you guys for having me. I mean, it's a pleasure to be on. I love talking about this stuff. And what's up, Footer Nation? All right. So anyway, yeah. So paranormal, that's what's great about being a paranormal researcher and also being able to, look for Bigfoot and other things is that we cut down the sides and right down the middle. Being a paranormal researcher, when I say paranormal, I'm talking about ghosts and those kind of things. So we'll put that in that category. You go into the houses, you go into these places, and the devices that we use to collect these EVPs in video, we deal with a different frequency. So because we're dealing with, in my opinion, frequencies in the environment, it's almost easier to catch something like that in a weird way. And how that happens after all this time, I still don't know. You know what I mean? Maybe our brains put it on. Once again, I do have evidence of our own brains making EVPs happen. I mean, I have plenty of those EVPs from Playball on my team. But also we do capture the weird stuff. So when you're tracking cryptids now cryptids come in different categories though. So just like we look into the paranormal, we have poltergeist activity, we have intelligent hauntings, we have residual hauntings, and then we have the thing that I keep finding recently is I put intelligent residual together because this is what happens. So, I mean, we have all these different categories. In the cryptid world, we have supernatural cryptids, things that may be like the Mothman, the Jersey Devil, things like that are more supernatural in the way that they act and how they come across. We have flesh and blood ones, in my opinion, once again, like a Bigfoot, who would be more like a humanoid type thing. A Dogman, I still put Dogman in a supernatural category. But in my opinion, I think a lot of Dogman encounters are actually Bigfoot encounters. They're just misidentifications. I mean, humans screw up all the time. I screw up all the time. We misidentify so many different things, especially if we're in a certain mindset. Right. So when we track cryptids, it's very complex, and I almost find ghost hunting to be a lot easier because when you're going into a house to do a ghost investigation, we kind of know what we're getting into in some way, shape, or form, and we also know that 9 times out of 10 we're talking to a human spirit, a spirit of the house, or maybe a dark entity, but we have an idea of what's going on. When you walk into the cryptid world and you're out into the woods or on the lakes or wherever you are looking to this, we are way outside our element. Once again, even though I do mountaineering, You know, my team, I have professional trackers on my team, things like that. We're in the woods all the time. We still are out of our environment because we don't live in the woods.
Well, sure,
You
right.
know, we go into the woods to enjoy the woods, you know, on nature walks, hikes, things like that, bushcrafting, bushwhacking. But if you stay into the woods for after a while, we don't, even though we've become part of the environment, we're still missing those old school senses that we used to have way back in the day where we could, you know, fend for ourselves.
Right.
So cryptid tracking is, you can say it's split up into more categories. So it depends on what cryptid we're kind of looking for.
That's interesting. You know, you were mentioning paranormal investigations at like houses and that sort of thing. Ralph and I just talked to a demonologist yesterday, and I've also talked to another paranormal investigator, and both of them agree that the job is really kind of a boring job most of the time. It's just, you know, it's a lot of hurry up and wait, you know, and you know, and that paranormal investigator that we spoke to said that oftentimes the first thing he does when he enters a house that's purportedly to be haunted, he'll look inside their medicine cabinet to see if there's any medications in there for possible mental illness. And he told me that once he went into an investigation and he looked, and this couple was saying that there was just all kinds of weird stuff happening at their homes. And he went in there and he looked on their bookshelf, and the bookshelf was filled with occult stuff. And so he kind of went, I don't know if this is legit or not, you know. And so how often when you do paranormal investigations in a house, how often do you find that to be the case?
99.9%.
Really?
I mean, I'm just being honest. And that's why I say in 24 to 25 years of paranormal investigation, I have come across 2 haunted houses out of probably a couple thousand. I mean, we're talking a couple thousand throughout time. So yeah, 9 times out of 10, it's manifested by the people in the house. I mean, it's that simple. Poltergeist activity is now more prevalent in adults. Okay. We're stressed out nonstop about money. We're stressed out about our jobs. We're stressed out about family life. We're stressed out. I mean, there's so much stress. Okay. When you look at poltergeist and the noisy ghost from the German lore, it always an adolescent woman coming into her own, and then boom. It's not that way. I mean, Americans are daily stressed out every day. I mean, let's be honest. So now more and more we're seeing that. Another thing, like you say, mental illness is on an all-time rise, I would think, maybe because we're diagnosing it more. Maybe there's more diagnoses that aren't even real. They just automatically medicate you. That's actually part of our questionnaire. We ask about those type of things. Once again, I mean, if we're going by observation, we do find that people do take medicine, do take those kind of things. Most people that call me for a paranormal investigation, or who do you think would call me the most? Women. It's not the men, it's the women. Okay. Yeah. We get to the house, the husband is all, usually part of my language, pissy that we're even there. Yeah. And he's just like, you know what I mean? It's women. Women are more emotional. Women can feel a lot more because they're empathic. So they have these feelings. But in the same sense, I mean, that's what we find when we do paranormal work. And that's just the facts. And I'm all about logical facts and data. That's what I'm about. And that's kind of where I leave it. But yeah, I mean, most of the time we come into the houses, we don't find anything at all. And if we do find stuff, it's more of a poltergeist activity that then the people that live there are trying to sell to us. They're like, well, this is happening. This is happening. You know, I believe it's happening. I do believe. I'm not going to say it's not. But also, I'm not going to say that the demon that you say that's in your basement that you brought home from McDonald's is down there. No, I'm not going to say that. You know what I mean? It's like,
but you know, I mean, yeah. I mean, you also have to live in reality as well.
Yeah.
Ralph, what do you think about that?
I think that he's right in the aspect of that a lot of people are just experiencing stuff that's not there. I can understand his 99.9% for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of it's just people's imaginations run wild.
It could be. Yeah. Speaking of wild,
I'm not saying that for us. So
what? Say again?
And I'm just saying that about our team and what we've witnessed. Now, I'm sure there's other teams out there that have witnessed something totally different than we have. But I can only go by what we have witnessed, and it's just the private houses are just, it depends on your classification of haunting too. I hate that word. I really hate the word haunting. If we're looking into it, like, is it something that they're just annoyed with? Is it something that they're okay with, but they kind of want more information about? Or is it something that they're blowing up into something that's way more than because they watch The Exorcist on TV and they're watching all these paranormal shows on TV? So, I mean, the classification of the word the haunting itself is different classifications. But whenever I hear, and 9 times like out of 10, once again, the people that are calling us, it's the most extreme behavior. So you're talking about people that have like cabinets slamming and shut, they're getting pushed. All this like very extreme behavior that's the first red flag for me always.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I kind of want to get back to the cryptid investigations. Now you have a new thing going on, and it's kind of a new endeavor, and it's called Project X. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And in that project, you explore the idea that Bigfoot may be a interdimensional being or possibly alien.
I do.
You explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so for my disclaimer right off the bat, so I don't get yelled at, I'm a flesh and blood Bigfoot guy, okay? I believe that Bigfoot is his own species all by itself. And that's kind of where I leave that. But I've had 2 encounters, and both the encounters that I had, it looked like a flesh and being living creature. So that's where I leave that. But with that being said, many people that I talk to, many of the witnesses that come forward to the New York Bigfoot Society say that they have paranormal type experiences with a Bigfoot. Some people say they can do mind speak with them. Other people say they're there and then they magically disappear. All right. Excuse me. Other people, take Bigfoot and they put it with aliens, and they're saying it's a type of alien, extraterrestrial, because UFOs and Bigfoot sightings are in the same area, which I have a whole theory about that. So when we look at all the different sightings that people are having, I think it's super important as a researcher to stop, take what my belief is, which is a flesh and blood creature, set that aside, and then go and start researching these other aspects of a Bigfoot and all these like theories, because that's the only way we grow as a researcher and grow in the community. For me to poo on someone else's thought process, I mean, that doesn't gain anything, Right. And once again, and that's not right, because we don't know what a Bigfoot is. We don't know. We don't have a body publicly, and when I put that publicly, that as someone is studying that we can then know everything about. No, we don't. So with that said, everything that we do is based on a theory. And because we talk so many theories, it's important that we look at all aspects of the phenomena and bring that together. So what NYBS Project X does is I have 11 researchers throughout the state of New York. They work for different teams, different societies and organizations. We all come together in one collective ambassador unit, and we all do the experiments that we're putting in place to then look into these phenomena of, well, why are people seeing orbs in the woods? Why are people getting weird feelings in certain spots in the woods? Why is this happening and that? And then we come together in a collective and share the data that we're all getting throughout the whole state of New York, which is great because we have the whole state covered now. And then we take that data, crunch the data for Footer Nation, and then we put it out to the public. And that's in a nutshell, what this project is.
Uh-huh. So, yeah, I know that the whole idea of Bigfoot possibly being an interdimensional being rather than flesh and blood is kind of divided the Bigfoot community in a big way. We talked to a couple of Bigfoot investigators recently, and they were telling us that, like you, they don't poo on the idea, but they want to concentrate more on the flesh and blood, rather than anything else. And they both had pretty strong feelings about the interdimensional being thing.
Yeah.
And, but again, they didn't like disregard it. They just said, it's not for us. But Wild, what do you think about this idea?
It sounds really, really cool. I will say, Gary, I listened to your right before the show. I listened to your interview at DarkHour Paranormal, so I got a pretty good background of what your experiences and your work. So yeah, I want to do some academic paranormal research, and I kind of shied away from Bigfoot because Bigfoot to me is a little ethically suspicious for me to the research, because I believe he's intelligent. I believe he's probably more intelligent than humans, perhaps. And so, in science, in order for Bigfoot to be accepted as an animal, then we really need a body. So to me, the ideal situation, because he is smart and he or she is intelligent, the ideal situation would be finding a corpse. If you can find a corpse, that'd be perfect. I don't want to shoot one. I don't think anybody should shoot one of them just for the sake of it. So for those reasons, I kind of steered away, but that's not to say other people shouldn't do it. Just thinking about my personal talents and my personal techniques, I just didn't think I want to do it because of that. And then my other question, or my question is, with your Project X, what are the types of data you're collecting? What categories of data? And then what is your end goal with this project? What are the deliverables that you want to produce with this project?
No, those are great questions. So with Project X, the overall goal of Project X is to take the possible paranormal phenomena that people witness in the woods. So when we talk about interdimensional Bigfoots, right? When you're in the woods, we get high EMF readings in certain spots where we should not be getting any EMF readings at all. You use, natural tri-field meters. We use regular tri-field meters. We use all these different gizmos and gadgets in the woods to get the milligauss numbers and things like that. In that we should not be getting certain things in certain areas. Now, knowing that rocks and things like that and limestone and granite all do have natural EMF that gives off energy in the woods, we want to then try to debunk some of these claims that there could be portal areas. But what I can say is in some of these weird areas where people go in and they start saying like they have a problem breathing, they get goosebumps all over them, they start getting headaches, almost like EMF poisoning in a house. Once again, if we look at EMF poisoning and how people start getting stomach aches and all these different ailments, some people start getting this in the woods in random areas. And some of these areas where people are getting these feelings are in Bigfoot known areas. So we're trying to then crunch the frequencies, all these data numbers, and try to come up with a hypothesis of why these people may be witnessing these type of feelings and things like that. Also, for us, it also could help our research, because if we can put a correlation between these different numbers of of the EMFs and the frequencies in the environment, because I'm a big frequency guy, I go by frequency with everything. And we starting to see correlations in certain areas, in certain spots, and we're starting to find tracks in these areas and structures or anything that may be Bigfoot related. Then we might be able to further learn some other behaviors and why that they're coming into these areas. So the data we want to put out to the Bigfoot community is like, listen, this is what we're finding. We're finding that, in this spot, we're getting high milligauss, and the next thing you know, we're getting EMFs, and then we're getting a frequency reading of this. And then for whatever reason, we're also finding footprints in this spot and this blah, blah, blah. When you go into the woods, bringing these different units of measure into the woods, which people really don't do, then we can gain more information. And my whole thing is you can never have enough information. Even if it's garbage information, even if the data will do nothing at the end of the day, it's still data. Data is data, and facts don't, and numbers don't lie. So that's my opinion on it.
I think you could be entirely correct about the frequency thing. And that people are getting ill in these areas where Bigfoot is being sighted. And the reason I think it's entirely possible is that I know that dolphins have the ability to do this. They'll surround, say, a shark and to protect their young. and they'll send out these frequencies, these brain waves, and just flip the shark out. I mean, I remember watching a video of this once, and it was just amazing that the shark just goes into spasms. So I think that's entirely possible. Wild, what do you think? Being a biologist, can you kind of clear that up a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar 100% with that adaptation. I mean, I'm sure it is legit. I'm sure that dolphins can do that. Just like certain, I think, big cats like lions and tigers, they could produce infrasound, super low sound waves, and elephants, for instance, could communicate over long distances, using some kind of waves. Once again, I'm not 100% sure what the thing is. The point is that animals do use frequencies and waves that are invisible to humans or imperceptible to do certain things like communicate or make people uneasy or animals uneasy. And I mean, there's even an extreme version of this is the electric eel can produce these tremendous amounts of electricity. So it is very common in the animal kingdom for these things to happen. And I mean, the other thing is I really think that Bigfoot has probably tremendous adaptations. That's probably why we haven't been able to catch him, or her. It's because its body is built to stay hidden. It's a really good evolutionary adaptation to stay hidden. Lots of animals, their whole life is about staying hidden, whether through camouflage or through behavior or mimicking. I mean, it is a very good evolutionary adaptation to just be hidden. And the reason why I think they're smarter than humans is also because we haven't caught them yet. They're probably very, very smart, and they probably have really good skills at remaining hidden in the woods. Well,
yeah. You had brought up the point that we have yet to even find a corpse of one of these things, and so Gary, I'd like your input on this and possibly an explanation as to why we haven't. I mean, so there's so many hunters out in the woods, and there's people like you that are out there gathering information, and no one has ever found a corpse. And I really wonder why. And I say that objectively. I don't want you to think I'm debunking Bigfoot. I'm a complete Bigfoot, even though I've never seen one. But I think the evidence has mounted to the point where, I mean, I completely believe that that it exists. But yeah, I really wonder why we never found a corpse.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple reasons, but to kind of piggyback to the whole infrasound thing, I'm a big infrasound believer. All the largest mammals on the planet give off infrasound. Elephants, when they slam the ground with their foot, they give off that vibration infrasound for miles. They say that big cats, when they roar once again and put out different sounds, they once again put out infrasound. If Bigfoot is the largest primate or a species of its own, it would be able to do something very similar. I can tell you for myself, in Bigfoot areas where we've researched and been having Bigfoot activity happen, our bodies will get into that fight or flight mode out of nowhere. And it's a feeling that you feel like you're going to die. It's weird. I mean, it's unless you go through it, and I'm sure a lot of people have had that where you start getting goosebumps, you kind of get nauseous a little bit, but you feel like something is very off. I believe that we're getting hit with infrasound. And the only reason I believe that, because we'll be having tree knocks around us, which I have a whole bunch of theory on that. And also we're in areas that we know that that we have Bigfoot activity. Corpse now, I just actually talked about this on a podcast last week. I've changed my mind on this subject. And that's what's great about Bigfoot in theory, because we can change our minds when theories don't match up, and we have to think of things logical. Okay. If I go back, for a long time, people are like, well, Gary, you haven't found a body and blah, blah, blah. Why don't you found bones in the woods? And I was always like, listen, as a person, I'm a hunter. I'm in the woods. I bow hunt. I don't find bear carcasses in the woods. I don't find porcupine carcasses in the woods. Okay. And I live in upstate New York. I mean, it's woods everywhere. But it's very rare to even come across certain things. But one thing I did start to think about, I'm like, wait a minute. If you've ever watched Missing 411, right? And about the stories where people go magically missing in the national parks, and then years later, someone will find their skeleton and skull and things like that. I started to think you know what? Then why aren't we finding Bigfoot remains? Because we're finding people remains in the woods, but now this doesn't make sense anymore to me. So then I started logically, I started thinking about the stories that I hear. If we're going way back in the day, and I don't have dates for you, so I'm sorry for that, but there's been Bigfoot stories where people have shot a Bigfoot, okay? And this is going back. And this, once again, I guess what was happening is there was these people were in the woods in a cabin. Long story short, they ticked off the Bigfoot somehow. The Bigfoot started slamming the cabin, and one got shot, okay? Well, when that one got shot, another one came out of the woods, grabbed it, threw it up over his shoulder, and took off into the woods. Now, let's think logically. What does that kind of behavior logically? Humans do that, right? Apes do that, all right? There's other animals that aren't just taking their young and flinging them up. Possums, yes, and kangaroos, we understand those things. But if we're looking at the motion of picking up an animal, throwing it on your shoulder, and running off into the woods, that is a human-type behavior. That's a primate-type behavior, okay? If then they do have these types of behaviors that we're slowly, people just kind of aren't taking those stories and really dissecting them, because in Bigfoot, I think we're doing it totally wrong. I'm starting to think we're doing it totally wrong. And because, we'll get into that. But if that is the type of behavior, then they could bury their dead. If these creatures, I don't think they're as smart as everybody says they are. I really don't. I think what it comes down to is our brains as humans get in the way, because we don't have those survival instincts anymore, okay? When we're in the woods, that's not our environment. A Bigfoot is a master of its environment. It'd be a master because they live in the woods. I mean, when I go into the woods, I don't see bobcats when I'm out in the woods all the time. I don't see red fox all the time, okay? They're out there. We do get sightings of them, but we get sightings of Bigfoots crossing roads. So, they're just the masters of their environment, in my opinion. But they do have these, this other things that they do. Like I say, like we have 6 senses. They have like 7, 8, 9, 10 senses is all. And that's why I think people think that they're more paranormal. But I think they bury their dead now. I really do, because it would make sense. We get a lot of Bigfoot reports around cemeteries also. So
really, I didn't know that.
Yep. That's actually a common thing throughout the United States. So if we kind of put this stuff together slowly from a logical perspective, anything that can pick up another, say, 400 or 500 pound creature, throw it up over his shoulder, run into the woods, all right, then maybe they might bury their dead. Maybe that's why we're not finding the bodies, because we're not really looking for burial mounds. We're just looking for, once again, we're looking for bones and things like that. So
I remember an incident that I heard about where a guy was out in the woods. I don't know what he was doing, hunting or whatever. And he came across what he described as a family of Bigfoot. And they were burying one of their own. And they saw him. He turned around and left and went back to the same location later on. And there was no burial mound, no nothing. The hole was still there. The grave was still there, but it's as though because they saw him, they decided to move the body elsewhere.
Yeah, and that would make sense. And if we logically think of it that way, and this is once again, this would have to be a flesh and blood creature, or maybe an alien. I mean, maybe they would do that too. Who knows? That, it would make logical sense. I mean, we hear I go by a lot of the Native American tribes. Okay. And in New York, we have the Iroquois and the Algonquins. They're the main ones that I've talking to their elders and things like that about the Bigfoot phenomena. And they both said the same thing. Bigfoot is its own tribe of people. Okay. But as we know, the Native Americans in every tribe says something totally different, but if we do go by that, they think that they're their own tribe of people, all right, that then it would kind of make sense that they may bury them. And then, I don't think they bury them in caves, and everybody's like, well, they're not hiding in caves. And no, they would be found in caves. I go in caves. Humans go in caves. All right. That's not, we understand cave systems. But I think they may bury them, and that's why we're not finding the bodies in the woods, because we don't look for that stuff.
Yeah.
I have something I just came up with. Well, first of all, I'll say, yeah, I totally think the burying thing is possible. I remember one time at university, there was an anthropologist who gave a talk, and they found like a really old human burial like pit. Basically, there was this weird cave that was, hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of years old, and these ancient humans would just like throw dead bodies in there. So it was like a burial thing. So I definitely think Bigfoot buries it's dead. Okay, so as I was listening to you, Gary, earlier today on Dark Hour, as I'm listening to you now, I just came up with like an idea. I want to get your opinion on. Okay, so it's a kind of a crazy idea, and I tell you, I just thought about it just right now, but I'd like to get your opinion on it. Okay, so this is a way. When I come up with like research plans, I usually like to do them really cheap, really cheap and like not a lot of effort, because if they fail, well, then you don't really lose a lot of effort. You don't really lose a lot of money. So this is what I was thinking. Okay, so I've been on this idea that in order for science to recognize Bigfoot, we do need a body, because every animal that we know of has a body. What happens is if we discover a new species of animal, we have the body, we deposit it in a museum, and then we write a formal paper that describes what the animal looks like. It has photographs and measurements. We give it a new name in Latin, and then we publish that paper in an academic journal. And then nobody's going to argue with you if it's a real animal or not, because that paper has the museum listed where the specimen is. So if somebody starts saying, I don't believe a giraffe is real, well, then we tell them just go to the museum and look at it for yourself. So there's no debate. I do think it would be beneficial to get Bigfoot to this place. And one of the reasons is I think it would be good because for the conservation efforts, if we recognize it as a real animal, we could protect it better. And I think it would be beneficial for the animal. So this is my plan to get to this thing. Okay, like I said, it's a really crazy plan. So I think the best way to get a body is to find a corpse. Okay, as we just discussed, it's very hard to find a corpse, if not impossible. Now, thinking about gifting and people gifting things to Bigfoot, I was thinking it'd be really great if the Bigfoot could gift us a corpse. It'd be really, really great if we could get a gift of a corpse from Bigfoot. So my plan is basically to get a Bigfoot to gift us a corpse. Now, you just said you don't think it's very intelligent. I think they might be very intelligent. I don't know. Nobody knows really. But this plan may work even without high intelligence. These guys, they have culture, they have understanding. Okay, so here's what the plan is. I would come up with a very detailed plan. I would write it out. The detailed plan would say, this is what I'm going to do as soon as you gift me a corpse, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the corpse. I'm going to write this formal paper. I'm going to have it published. The corpse is going to be treated with respect. It's going to go to this museum. And then what we're going to do is we're going to, try to get all this legislation passed. And then we just make this really detailed plan detailing exactly all the steps all the way into the future. Okay. So then we go to the woods and I don't know, we like leave the plan there. We think about it. We try to put out these vibes. Perhaps they could just sense what we're thinking through telepathy or whatever. But basically, that's kind of just what the plan is. It's, we're just asking them. We're saying, hey, we're coming from a really good place. Our intentions are to, help you preserve your land, preserve your culture, preserve your family members. But what we really need is we need you to gift us a corpse. We're going to treat this corpse with utmost respect. And here's a detailed plan of what we're going to do. So that's just basically my plan in a nutshell. Don't judge me too hard. I thought about it 2 minutes ago, but I would love to.
Well, the thing I would have to say about that is that how would we actually communicate with the Sasquatch? I mean, leaving a pictorial graph out there depicting what we intend to do. And if they're as intelligent as you say, I wonder if they wouldn't bother with that because they see what we do with other animals. We're out there hunting them all the time, and they certainly don't want to be hunted. So, I mean, I wonder how detailed you could get in some sort of pictorial graph that they would be able to figure out. I mean, it's not as though we can go out and like yell out our plan,
right?
I mean, so I don't know how we could really do that. Gary, what do you think about that?
Well, to clear up quick, when I say that they're not intelligent, I don't mean it as far as they are intelligent for their environment. I mean, let's be real. Do I think they're intelligent like human beings and like, Stephen Hawking and things like that? No, I don't. I think they're intelligent for what they need to be intelligent for, and that's masters in their environment, living in an environment that, you know, they can't be seen. They can cover their tracks, which they don't because we find tracks. So they make mistakes just like everybody does. So I think they're very intelligent for survival reasons, but I just don't think they have the capacity to think like we're thinking right here with our language to think even these thoughts that we're thinking. So once again, I just want to clear that up. So I do think that they're intelligent, but it's more, once again, survival of what they need to be intelligent for. Sure. So as far as a corpse and things like that, like we're talking about, well, let's go to communication. I mean, let's talk about intelligence. Here we go. One thing, 2020, what was the year from? 2020 was the year of communication for me. Okay, so what I mean by that is that's all I focused on was communicating with a Sasquatch. Now, how did I do that? I used the Chinese Mandarin alphabet. All right, so I was putting symbols out into the woods in the Bigfoot areas throughout the state that I had research areas in. So what happened? In our main research area in the Adirondacks that I've been now there for about 10 years in this one spot, so I do believe that they would know who I am. Because I've been there for so long, and kind of, I don't want to say bother them, but I'm in the woods and they would recognize, after a while, I do believe they recognize who you are. And so I would put out, stick glyphs all over. I'm a big glyph. I use glyphs all over the place. And we talk about gifting, and I'm a big gifter. I gift, I do gifting. So I put the stick glyph in one of my areas, and it was for man. Okay, so I'm like, all right, so we put that out. I put a bunch of apples out because, Bigfoots enjoy the food that are around them. Apple trees, blueberry bushes, whatever time of year that those things are out, they that's why you see them in, apple orchards and things like that. So anyway, put the apples out. Nothing touched the apples for weeks. So I was going back every week, okay? We have trail cameras up, everything. Nothing changed in the environment. Well, then I end up going back, and then guess what happened? Where I had the symbol for man, a stick was laying across it, and so it looked like an A now. When you go into the alphabet, guess what that means? Big man. So something came over, put a stick down, and started communicating with us. I then was like, all right, that's kind of cool. Took a picture of it. That was about it. So then I put the symbol down on the ground for friends. One thing I do when I go into the woods, I always say friends. Friends. I constantly say friends. Now, I don't believe they know what the word means. I believe they would know the vibration and frequency of that verbiage. So right. Because I'm doing it in a positive manner, I do believe that they would understand that I'm not a threat, because I'm not being a threat. I'm doing it like a greeting. Because Once again, and that's what I believe. And it seems to work. It really does seem to work. And it's really strange. And I don't know why it works, but we do end up getting, cool things that happen around, like, with knocks, and we'll hear them walking around us and things, but they don't really bother us too much. So anyway, I go and I put the glyph down for friends. Well, the next week we came back, myself, Kenny, Irish, and a couple of my other people, and sure enough, we found a 13-inch foot track right in the middle of the friends. So something came, it stepped down, there was 2 tracks, so you could see where the creature stopped and bent down and was like looking at what was on the ground because of the way the tracks were originated. Okay. Yep. And then it went off. So to me, yes, it didn't, like, even though it didn't change the glyph, it still was standing in the middle of it, looking at whatever it was. Then what we did is I made a teepee structure around a tree. So I took 8 sticks, because I'm all data oriented. Took these 8 sticks, put it around a tree. Then we took a fake sunflower, and put it up on the tree, just for color, just to draw attention to it.
Yeah.
Once again, now this could be multiple things, but this was weird. So we come back the following week. Well, one of the sticks was down, okay, on the ground. I'm like, probably a deer hit it, or porcupine, or raccoon. But the weird thing was when we measured it from the tree, it got moved 25 inches away from the tree. And whatever it was, grabbed it and slid it across the ground. So there was a dig mark from where that was, dug into the ground, pushed all the way out, okay, and then laid on the ground flat. Well, when you took the picture and you looked at the picture, in which we have the pictures, it was in the shape of an A again, which would mean big man. So that's 2 times in about a month and a half that glyph got changed to big man. Now, once again, the one on the tree, I'm still speculative because I can sit there and debunk it. I debunk stuff all day long. That's what I do. But because it was 25 inches from the tree, and then what we did is we recreated it again and again, trying to figure out how that would happen. In order for that to happen, that stick actually had to be picked up and a pressure applied to the stick to then make that dig scrape mark across the ground, kind of like how a deer scrapes in the woods.
Sure.
So it had to be pressure on that. So because there was so much pressure on that to then pull that out and then lay it down on the ground, and when it was laid on the ground, it was perfectly laid across. So if an animal did that, once again, maybe it would fall that way, but 9 times out of 10, you could see the logical pattern there. So that's what we started doing and we started finding it. Now, in other areas that we did throughout the state, we did the same type of thing and we got responses. I actually here's a crazy story that me and my daughter, we went canoe camping. All right. Once again, she's into outdoor stuff also. So we end up packing the canoe and went up into the woods. Now, this once again is a Bigfoot known area, but I didn't tell her that, I'm not going to scare her. So we end up going into the woods and we went backcountry camping. When we got to the campsite, I kid you not. And once again, it takes a trained eye. I go to the back of the campsite, and what did I find in the back of the woods? Glyphs. Now, these glyphs was in the shape of an A, but the difference with these glyphs, there was little sticks lined up next to it. So I was almost thinking, like, is it counting people? Because what it looked like to me, it's like if a foot came in, it was counting. Okay. That night, once again, I didn't tell her because I'm not trying to freak her out. This was an end of the year excursion. I wasn't Bigfooting. I wasn't even thinking Bigfoot, nothing. I was just out with my daughter having a good time, fishing and stuff like that. That night we were hanging out by the fire, having a good time. We put the fire out around 10 o'clock at night. All right. She goes in the tent, and then I shut off all the lights, get ready, the lantern and stuff, get into the tent. Not even exaggerating. 5 minutes after everything got shut off, you hear a huge tree knock right behind camp. Huge tree knock.
Whoa.
Now, whatever this was, slammed that tree so hard. And I'm saying, once again, like, I don't know what it hit the tree with. I think it hit the tree with a rock. I think tree knocks are actually rock knocks. Mm-hmm. I don't think they use sticks. They use rocks. It would make logical sense because primates do use rocks. We know that for a fact. Also, a lot of people get rocks thrown at them by Bigfoot. You hear those stories, how like rocks get tossed at them. If you pick up a stick in the woods, pick up any stick in the woods, and you hit a tree and tell me what happens. They break. It's all deadfall. It's all rotten. And then to find the diameter of the tree, the same diameter of the tree, to get that same hollow knock sound, it's impossible. It's impossible. But when you use rocks against the tree, you get that nice hollow sound every single time, regardless of what type of tree you use. So this thing was slammed the tree so hard, she got scared. She was petrified. We just got into the tent. These are the stories that you hear from people that come to us saying, Gary, our family just got in a tent, and next thing you know, things are going crazy around us. The same thing happened to us. But the reason I brought that up is if we go back to the glyph that I found behind the camp where we were, it would almost seem like they were counting how many people were in the campsite. So if a Bigfoot came in at that time when the Bigfoot came in, not for us, but if there was other people there before, that it was, if any other Bigfoot came in, they would see that, oh, listen, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 people. There's a family of 4. There's a 3. So they do communicate what I do find through glyphs. And like I say, we've had success with it. So, I mean, to answer your question, that's a long-winded question. I'm sorry.
No, it's very good. No, it's very good. I liked it very much.
But to do a corpse, I guess, I mean, at the end of the day, we would have to then try to find what the glyph for corpse was, and then hope that we establish a relationship with that potential specimen. That's the key. Is I truly believe that you have to gain trust and you have to gain that relationship with them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
once again, that's logical sense for anything in life. I mean, that's just anything in life. So that would be tough. And then the one thing I believe that we're dealing with in my main research area are juveniles, because once again, we get a lot of juvenile behavior. I think a lot of the extreme Bigfoot behavior is juveniles because they're coming into their own. They would have to be alpha in the pack. Okay, once again, just like all animals, once the one comes into its own, then it's going to challenge the adult male if you have another male in there. Yep. And I believe that that's what we start dealing with. Same thing. I think there's a lot of inbreeding. Once again, that's why we see cleft palate and things like that. People have witnesses where they look like they have cleft palate. They look like they're disformed. That would make sense because once again, the alpha male is going to breed with all the daughters. I mean, that's just what it is.
Sure, it happens. It happens in nature.
Yeah, it happens. Yeah, we look at it with all animals, especially feral cats and things like that. So, I think once again, that's, it could be possible. And I know this sounds crazy, but it could be possible, but that I just don't think that would ever happen. Because I mean, it would have to be, I don't even know the logic behind that, but once again, anything's possible. And that's why I leave it. That's why Project X is something outside of what I would ever do in the Bigfoot field, way outside. But I think it's very important that we do look at all this weird stuff. That's the long-winded point.
we have somebody in the chat room that goes by the name of Frapsap, and he says, Black Lotus Productions, wild trees, why a Sasquatch corpse? Why not just shoot him with a tranquilizer dart instead?
Well, like I said, ethical reasons, Well, look, first of all, okay, in science, if you do a research project with a vertebrate animal, so this is an animal that has bones in it. I'm talking eagles, lizards, monkeys. You have to do all this paperwork, and you have to have a veterinarian on staff. Even if you're just going to do a research project where you're just looking through binoculars, looking at an eagle, you have to follow all these rules. Okay, so because it's a vertebrate animal. Now, this does not apply to plants or insects or jellyfish or squid. So I guess legally, ethically, and just to be, the scientific community. And the other thing is, like I said, it's an intelligent animal. We don't want to just shoot something just to prove it. So that's my answer. I mean, plus it's dangerous. What if it's like mother, brother, sister comes out and tears you into 100 pieces? I just don't think it's a smart idea. I don't think you should shoot at anything you don't know what it is. So, perhaps I'm not getting mad at you or whatever. That's a good question, but that is my answer. And so I would say, look, to me, but what your response was, I do think it'd be worth it to try. If I was going to do a project, even if it took me a decade's worth of work, just slowly communicating with this Bigfoot, if I could, in a decades of slowly just communicating with, if I could get a Bigfoot to give me a corpse, that would be like in the history books. I mean, to me, that would be 100% worth it. That would be that's like a home run. That's the end goal. So, yeah. That's why I wouldn't shoot a Bigfoot, basically.
I agree with you, and obviously they're families, and they're very protective of their own, as all families would be. And so I agree with you that if you did something like that, Uncle Bob Bigfoot would probably come charging at you, and you'd really have a bad day. Gary, I'd like to get back to the communication aspect. You were mentioning about the rock knocks on these trees, and I agree with you. I think that rocks are, they're easy to carry around with you, and
they're not going to break, like you said.
And they're not going to break. And I think they use them. People say that, you had mentioned that people say that they've had rocks thrown at them. I think that they are using, when they throw these rocks, they are doing it to warn people away, because I think that they're probably pretty accurate with these rocks, and they don't necessarily want to hurt you, but it's a warning that, you're venturing into an area that they don't want you to be. But as far as the rock knocks go on trees, why do you think that they do this? I mean, are they communicating with each other, or are they communicating with you possibly? And the other question I have is actually breaks away from the communication thing. But what's your knowledge about Bigfoot nests where possibly they're giving birth?
All right, so here we go. So let's go right around the circle. So the tranq dart thing. Here's another thing no one really thinks about with tranq darts. You know, I work in veterinary medicine. Okay, we don't know how much tranquilizer to give a Bigfoot. We don't know how that would kill it. We could kill it right there. Think about it. When we give anesthesia to dogs and cats, when we're doing surgery on them, everything's drawn up and everything's measured out. Okay. When they trank bears and things like that, we understand how a bear's metabolism work. We understand how their bodies work and things like that. We don't understand how a Bigfoot would metabolize any kind of ketamine or any kind of drug that we use for an anesthetic to pass them out. So we got to think about that too. So more than likely, if someone darts one, we could kill it right on the spot. So then it kind of defeats the whole purpose of what we're trying to accomplish. A lot of people kind of don't think about that because they're just like, well, it's easy. Put a dart in it and then it falls asleep. But we have no idea what any kind of those drugs would do to an animal that we don't even understand how their metabolism or anything works. It's very important when you go under anesthesia. Think about humans. People have anesthetic reactions. A lot of people go into shock. Some people end up dying on the table and they bring them back. So those are kind of things that we would even have to think about if you're trying to dart any kind of animal. And then like Wild Tree said, the paperwork trail is insane. Alone that lag and the logs that you have to use, and veterinarians do have to be there, which I would know because I've dealt with that. Now, to go with rocks, I mean, like you say, you said it perfectly. Rocks are easy to carry. Okay. And once again, we've experimented with this. And when we throw rocks at trees and we hit, and that's what we do, we kind of throw them at the trees, we got responses back and it sounded just like it. So they do know the difference. Now, they could use rocks as weapons. One thing that I've noticed, and I wouldn't really say people should do this, but I agree with you, is that they throw rocks on you to see how you're going to react. Okay. 9 times out of 10, so if you get a rock thrown at you, and I've had plenty of rocks thrown at me, I've had them hit me, little pebbles. And they're so accurate. You don't know how they're that accurate. But they want to see a reaction. Now, as a researcher, what I've found out, though, is when they're doing that and they're throwing rocks at you, if you stand your ground long enough, it stops. So I don't say, once again, since I do this as like a serious hobby, and I say it's a hobby, to do research, I can't guarantee that a Bigfoot, if you stand your ground and they're throwing rocks at you, won't do something else. Obviously, no. And once again, when I say Bigfoot, I say possible Bigfoot. Everything's possible. Even though I've had 2 sighting encounters, and for myself, I know that they're real, it's still possible because that body still hasn't been found publicly. Now, I have submitted DNA to labs. I have. And guess what? It comes back. Contaminated, unconclusive. That's all you ever hear with that stuff. Once again, let's be real. You know, Wild Trees, he works in the science fields. If any amateur, any of us, and maybe not you because you work in science, but any amateur Squatch researcher collects any kind of specimen, hair specimens, you know, anything, DNA, blood samples, do you really think that the lab is going to tell us what we're sending them? Let's be honest. They're not going to tell us. That those DNA studies and all that stuff has to go through, you know, all these channels. Okay. So after the lab would even do the DNA study and analysis on it, that has to go to the next channel. If they ever found an unknown anything that's not even proven to anything, brand new species, we'll just say, do you honestly think that they're going to send that report back to the person who sent them that DNA?
Yeah, no, of course not. Because
it's not going to happen.
Right. And I've heard many times where people have taken video footage of a UFO, submitted it to the government, and poof, it disappears forever. You know? Exactly.
And that's a perfect example. And now the government can't hide it anymore. And now they're saying, oh, UFOs exist. And now we're opening back up another, UFO department. So, I mean, they say nothing exists. And then finally they have to come forward with it. But that's the thing, like collecting, in my opinion, like Wild Tree said, like we need to have a scientific person who's going to risk their whole reputation which really at the end of the day is more than likely probably won't happen. Even Dr. Meldrum, who's like the scientific, foot expert and, anthropology and all that stuff.
Right.
At the end of the day, let's be honest. I've met him. He's a great guy, very nice guy. Who even knows who he is? Unless you're a Bigfoot guy. If I was, if we go outside our community and start asking who Dr. Meldrum is, no one's going to know who he is. No one's going to know what he does for a living. No one's going to know anything. You know what I mean? It's going to take a person that's like really that people are going to be like, listen, we have credibility. This person is an outside of the community person. So it's going to take a scientist who doesn't believe in Bigfoot, doesn't believe in any of this stuff, that wants to take a hard-nosed approach to it. So then it's not tainted. So he's like, listen, this is what I'm looking at. This is the facts. But even then, let's be honest, they're still not going to give us the answer, because that scientist is going to has to go through the channels, and whatever those channels are. And if someone finds an undocumented species, there's the higher ups are the ones that are going to have to they're going to have to release that. I mean, I use the example of the giants. You know how they found the giant skeletons? Oh, they found them all over New York way back in the day. There's giant skeletons that have been buried that they found. They've been documented that they're real. But guess what? They magically disappear. And they're in this, now they're in the Smithsonian basement somewhere. There's all these reports that the Smithsonian came out once these giants were found, and then they magically made the bones disappear. And then they don't exist, even though that did exist when it happened. So these are the problems with that kind of stuff. So I kind of went around that a little bit, but I do that a lot. I'm sorry, I get on tangents. It's like I only have an hour to talk, but no. But with the whole rock thing, yeah, I agree. Like, once again, when we use rocks and we hit the trees and things like that, we do get those nice hollow sounds back. Now, what are they communicating? The only thing I can think that they're communicating, because we see it again and again and we hear it again and again, is that they're communicating to, like, oh, well, I'm over here and you're over here. There's people over here. There's something here. It's like a warning to the next ones that are in the area. Okay. We do, though, have tree knocks that have happened for us that say how many people are at camp.
Oh,
so if there's 3 of us at camp, we have got 3 tree knocks. So we would have to assume that because we heard 3 knocks, like, well, there's 3 of us here, and now we heard 3 knocks. So that could be a way that they're saying, listen, there's 3 people over here, so this is what's happening. And then we'd always hear a tree knock coming from a different direction. So I do believe that in the ambush theory, I think they ambush you. So kind of like how wolves and coyotes, they kind of come around. Same thing with the chimpanzees and things like that. When you're working in a group unit, orca whales, they work in a unit where they surround you, and then they watch you from both sides. So if there's 2 or 3 of them in a family, I believe if they kind of surround you all around you, and then they kind of watch and see what you're going to do, because that would make sense.
Yeah. That brings me to another question. How dangerous do you think these things are? Because generally speaking, they seem pretty timid, but you've heard stories, I'm sure, about, people who have been attacked.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a different person when it comes to this stuff. As a person that goes into the woods and does mountaineering and things like that. And, listen, when we go into the woods, there's 1% chance that we're not coming back out. I mean, there's that 1% chance that something may happen and you don't come out of the woods. So I always err on the side of safety. My team, when we go into the woods, I have a gear list they have to have just to go in the woods. I'm all about safety. Safety is the main thing. Now, we don't carry weapons. We don't carry any kind of, because we're non-kill, which, once again, even if you had a gun and you brought it into the woods, I mean, I'm not saying, people are trying to shoot Bigfoots. You just don't know what other animals come, mountain lions, bears, anything can come. Now, I put it this way. If these things are as intelligent as people talk about, and if they are their own species of human, wouldn't they have good days and bad days? Just like everything does in life, right?
Right.
Doesn't your own dog, sometimes if you have a dog or a cat, cats own people, but you wake up and one day your dog's happy and some days it's like kind of like, pissy and that's not happy. Aren't we like that? So everything, you think everything that has an emotion would be that way. So what states that a Bigfoot was always going to be happy and docile? Nothing. Humans make that happen. Humans think that. And for me, I don't think that way. When I go into the woods, I'm always thinking, listen, I don't know what's going to happen. I have to be in control of myself and the environment around me as much as I can, even though we don't have control of anything. So, yes, they seem docile. Yes, they tend to be docile. They tend to kind of stay away from you unless you provoke them. But once again, we don't know what we do to provoke them. Think about it. We do call blasting and play these sounds in the woods. We knock trees. We do all these physical things, but we don't even know what we're doing. Think about it. We don't know what those responses are. We're assuming we know, but it could be something totally different.
Right.
So it's like we got to be very, very careful when we do these things because we never know what response we're going to get back.
Absolutely.
So that's the kind of thing with that is and that's all communication because everything is a theory and everything is speculation, and we never know how one's going to act to us. A lot of the times when we go to people's houses, they're calling us because one is like they're slamming their barn or they're breaking into their chicken coop and eating all their chickens, or they're they're looking through their windows, or they're smashing the side of their house. You hear these stories. To me, is that a docile behavior or is that like a territorial behavior?
Right. Territorial.
You know what I'm saying? Because they know that there's food there. A Bigfoot would be a scavenger. I mean, just like anything, they have to survive. So they would scavenge anything they can scavenge. So, we got to always err on the side of safety.
So again, getting back to the question I had about the Bigfoot nests that people have been discovering. And they're quite large, and they're apparently made with a certain type of leaf that is would ease childbirth. What do you think about that? And from what I understand, these nests, other animals create like bears, they'll create a nest, but then they just leave it there. But these Bigfoot creatures apparently will build a nest and then come back the next day and destroy it and then build another one.
Yeah, I mean, you hear all the things about Bigfoot nests, and actually the answer, Frapsap, I think it is, question quick, how big are the skeletons? The skeletons that disappeared were 7 to 8 feet tall. So, I mean, you're talking 7, 8, we're talking same thing as Bigfoot's people. I mean, really, the average Bigfoot size is 7 to 8 feet tall is what we get. Some people, then you get the big ones. But, it could be possible that they were Sasquatch graves. Once again, it could be possible, and that would be possible another reason why these giants disappear. So it is possible. Things get erased and things disappear. We know that. So the Bigfoot nest theory, once again, people do find nests. I've seen nests. I haven't seen nests in my areas per se. I believe it depends on the area that you're researching. And I don't think all Bigfoots build nests. I don't. Depending on what's going on, that they have like caves and things like that they can hide in things. Now, I have heard that they build nests to hide. Now, one thing I have found myself is Bigfoots build blinds. And like a blind that they hide behind. Now, the only reason I really believe that is because we found a blind type structure that right behind the blind type structure, we found footprints, 14 to 15 inch footprints behind the structure. So that tells me that a Bigfoot built that. And if you actually look, just like the nest, they intertwine everything. Everything's intertwined and interknotted with that. So if a Bigfoot builds a nest in these areas, yeah, it would make sense that if we're going by the theory, like you said, that someone said they saw a Bigfoot burying their dead and then they just had an empty grave there, right? So they would always cover their tracks in some way, shape, or form. So if they go into this nest area, give birth, or whatever they do in this nest area, I mean, let's try to just be logical. Maybe it's a hide spot. Maybe it's an ambush spot. Maybe we have this totally wrong. That they build these things and they maybe they're on deer paths, maybe they're on animals are coming through there and they hide in these nests that we call nests, but all it is a blind, and they come out of it and they nab the game that's coming through. Mm-hmm. These are ideas and theories that we have to think about in the animal kingdom because we're still talking about the animal kingdom. So, but it would make sense that maybe if it is a blind type situation, maybe that's why they destroy it the next day. Think about it. We make a hunting blind. As a bow hunter myself, I put tree stands up in the tree and I go up in the tree. But I'm not always in the same tree all the time. And what do? When I take that tree stand, I take it out of the tree when I go home. I don't leave it in the tree. I take it home with me. Okay? So it would almost make sense that these nests that people call, they could be ambush sites where they build this structure, they go in it, and if there's game coming through the trails and things like that, because I don't think a lot of people that look at these nests are actually looking at the environment around it. They're just looking at the structure itself. But maybe they're not looking if there's a deer trail or game trail. Maybe they're not looking that there's coyotes coming through at a certain time, or there's some kind of animal activity where we have a Bigfoot in an ambush situation. So, and then after they're done doing an ambush, maybe that's why they break it down. And then they go build another one in another area because they already know that now that their scent is being given up. Because animals smells and scent rule the animal world, right? So we could look at it that way too.
Huh. Interesting.
I want to bring back up something you had said about the theory you have for UFOs being sighted along with the Bigfoots.
Awesome. And, it all goes back to Paranormal X, right? The NYBS Project X part. We find UFOs and Bigfoots together in areas that are highly magnetic. Animals, we know for a fact, are drawn to magnetic waves. We know that, once again. And they also repel. Look at sharks. I mean, they make magnetic things for sharks that actually repel sharks away from divers. Okay? These are new suits that they make. So there's cause and effects with magnetism when it comes to the animal kingdom. We also know that highly charged areas, like once again, since I live in New York, we have Pine Bush, New York, and everybody in the ufology world probably knows about the Pine Bush flap, right? Back in the 80s that we had. And that was one of the biggest things. Well, guess what happened? Down in Pine Bush, we have different areas like Nuclear Lake, it's called, and other areas down there that have major Bigfoot activity also. So, but we also know that, through ufologists and scientists actually looking into these theories, that we have magnetic ley lines that lay in these areas. Okay, like it's been shown by science. So if we go by these kind of things in magnetism and Earth's energy and things like that, it makes sense that these animals and UFOs are drawn to these same type of areas. There's a mutual interest. Now that's kind of where I put the Bigfoot UFO connection, that they're drawn to the same energy areas. Now, here's the other question. People do say they've seen Bigfoots going up and down out of UFOs, and I'm not going to say if they didn't see what they see. Maybe are aliens abducting Bigfoots like they abduct people? Is that a possibility?
I would say yes. Why wouldn't they? Why, if they bother us, why wouldn't they bother the Bigfoot?
100% in wild trees, I agree with you, and I think that may be plausible, right? So when we hear these kind of stories, it's like, I mean, it goes hand in hand. But that's why, I mean, all things in life are drawn to certain areas. Stonehenge. I mean, think about the people that go to Stonehenge. They say how it's a very, they feel the energy. They're drawn to these places from a spiritual and this a natural, like this normal human body. So it would make sense that they're drawn to these areas, in my opinion.
And I couldn't possibly agree with you more. I mean, these magnetic energies, some people may call them ley lines that are crossing. I've been to Stonehenge myself, and I mean, you can't help but feel something there. And maybe some of it is, you stand there in awe of the fact that it's so ancient. Maybe it's that, but I think it's more than that. I mean, you feel a vibration when you're there. But Gary, unfortunately, we're going to have to get out of here for the night. But before we go, could you tell us or tell our viewers where they can find you?
Yeah, well, once again, thank you so much for listening to my long-winded rants.
That's great.
I talk a lot. But anyway, so you can find me at the New York Bigfoot Society on Facebook. We're very active. Every day we're on there. I mean, that's the best way to find us. We just started up a YouTube channel. I'm not a big YouTuber, only because in the Bigfoot the Bigfoot community, I feel like YouTube is killing what we do because there's so many fake things out there. But once again, you can find us at the New York Bigfoot Society on the YouTube channel. We have a lot of our shows. We do a radio show. We do a podcast, the NYBS radio show. That's every other Thursday night. And we have different guests and researchers on. We talk all Bigfoot in New York. The main thing about my crew is we stay in New York. This is where we are. We want to get the best evidence possible out of our state. So those are the places you can find me. And then I'm on a lot of different shows and stuff. So just look up Hoot and Holler and you'll find me somewhere.
All right. Hey, Gary, it was great to have you here. We really appreciate it. We'd love to have you back again sometime.
Yeah, whenever. This was fun. I enjoy good conversation in a positive form. And I think that's the main thing. I always leave with this. At the end of the day, we're looking at all things weird, all things strange, right? We all have different opinions. We all come from different backgrounds. But at the end of the day, when you can come together in a positive forum, talking about subject matters that we all can disagree on and agree to disagree on in a positive manner, that is how we grow in the communities that we're in. And I always say, if you have something that you don't agree with, scroll on by. It's okay to scroll on by. You don't have to comment. But just be positive, because that's how we learn and grow with each other. And that's where I leave it.
And that's one of the reasons for Black Lotus. I mean, that, we want to remain objective to everything. And, and you were saying that if you don't agree with something, research it yourself.
Right.
I mean, and I can't stress that enough. Make sure you're going into it with an open mind and not just just simply debunk. But anyway, so yeah, we are going to get out of here. Viewers, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and make sure you hit the little bell so you know when we're going to be doing this again. Generally, we do this every Sunday, and Ralph and I are going to do some extra shows here, probably on Thursdays as well. And it'll just be the two of us, and we're probably going to interview somebody. But anyway, so make sure you do that. Anyway, until next time, keep thinking and question everything.